and gentlemen, welcome to America's Auto Enthusiast Program. This is Auto World. And now, here's your host, Bob Long.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here today on another version of Auto World, another hour. In this hour of the program, we're going to be talking oil, of course, with our expert Dan Watson from thelubepage.com, and in particular we're going to talk about motorcycle oil, something that really doesn't get talked about enough. We have left over from the previous hour Don Jones, who did a fantastic job putting together a little historical piece on the AMX from American Motors and also the Javelin and some of the other vehicles. So anything hot that you would like to promote on theoldcarguys.com?
No, nothing really hot going on right now, buddy, but stay tuned. I think that we're going to get something going here the next couple of months.
Good.
Our little stations are starting to cook.
And why don't you make sure and give out your own personal number?
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want to talk to the old car guy himself, hopefully to buy something, it's area code 314-306-7507, or just go to my website, theoldcarguys.com. Use the search engine. But if you can't find it or you don't use a computer, just give me a call and I'll see if I can help you find what you're looking for.
Sounds great. Thank you, my friend.
You're quite welcome. Talk to you later, buddy.
Okay, bye. And now we move to our lubrication expert with more than 25 years of experience with Amsoil products, one of the largest distributors of Amsoil in all of North America, and a gentleman with a very interesting background, having worked in the U.S. Navy in nuclear submarines on the engineering side. It's where he first saw them using synthetic oil, and that goes back a ways. Let's talk to Dan Watson. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Bob. Good to be on the show.
Good. Tell us a little bit about those Navy days. Do you have a lot of fond memories? Or
as they say, don't get an old Navy guy started and tell too many sea stories. But yes, I can always look back and say that my experience in the Navy is where I gained the knowledge and the practical use of a lot of engineering principles. My time in the submarine service as one of the nuclear trained techs in the engine room was just invaluable. I mean, there was so many things that we had to learn because a submarine has as much equipment on that submarine, that fast attack submarine or that ballistic missile submarine. I was on both kinds. We had as much equipment on the submarine as a World War II cruiser had in World War II. The difference was we had 105 people, sailors, on the fast attack submarine, of which about 85 were enlisted, and we had to take care of the same amount of equipment that about 600 sailors took care of on board a World War II cruiser.
Wow.
So lots and lots of stuff that you had to learn about because you had to know more than just a narrow field of understanding because you had to be able to take care of everything from specialized atmospheric control equipment to simple motors and generators that had been around a long time, lighting and turbine generators and distribution systems. My specialty was I was an electrician's mate when I started, and that was, just a broad electrical, mechanical application that we went through. And, of course, we were all trained in the nuclear side of the plant to understand all those things that had to be associated with nuclear physics, heat transfer, fluid flow, chemistry, physics, more physics than I thought I should have had to know. But those were great times and a lot of then we got to go right straight to the actual engineering in practice, which was the complex submarines that we were assigned to, and put all that head knowledge to work trying to keep these things operating. And used to say in the submarines, all that's important is that you have as many surfaces as you have dives, and then you'll be happy campers.
That's a great line. Let's talk a little bit about motorcycle oils. It just seems like there isn't much talk out there about motorcycle oils, so the simplest question I can throw at you is, basically, if motorcycle oil is different than regular automotive engine oil.
Well, it's a good question because one of the problems we have is that if a person goes out and buys a motorcycle, the thought is, well, it's an internal combustion engine. Probably if I go down to the big box store and buy myself 4 quarts of some type of, 30 or 40 weight oil, that ought to do the trick. Put it in there and use it. The problem is that that's not going to work. The motorcycles have a different internal construction than a standard automotive engine. And you run into the situation where a relatively small engine, really, with maybe, if it's a V-twin, it could have 2 cylinders, 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, okay? And this engine, which would not usually be over, the biggest ones would be 1,1800 cc's, about the size that you might find in the smallest Honda car, let's say. Mm-hmm. And yet, you can produce significant horsepower out of these engines. And these motorcycles can be quite impressive in their performance characteristics. So the question is, how do you rate this engine? What actually are we looking at? We have to say it's a high-performance engine that is designed to operate with higher output than its comparable regular automotive gasoline engine. And we have different types of bearings in some motorcycles where, like in the marine industry, where we may have needle bearings and roller bearings on the actual connector rod bearings rather than the standard bearings we're used to in an automotive application. So not all the way, but some here and there. So what we end up in a motorcycle oil is we need some things that we've gone away from in automotive engines. We need high levels of anti-wear additives, which we refer to as zinc and phosphorus type additives. If we don't have those, these motorcycle engines will just gradually wear themselves out because there's not high levels of that in your standard current rated automotive engine oils. And that's because we're trying to protect catalytic converters from carryover in automotive applications. We're not trying to protect catalytic converters in these motorcycle applications. The other thing is that a number of the motorcycles are air-cooled. They're not water-cooled. Some are. Big Honda Goldwings are water-cooled. Harley-Davidsons and Indian motorcycles, big V-twins, are not water-cooled. So they're going to run at elevated temperatures. So now I've got to have oil that can handle elevated temperatures. And we've talked about this before. You might be buying a brand new Toyota or Honda and putting 0W20 in it. You buy a brand new Harley-Davidson and you're running 20W50. And it better never see 0W20 or else it'll be worn out in a short period of time. So these are different machines that have a stressful lubrication regime. Not impossible, just means that they need to be lubricated correctly and they can go on for a long time. We've had Harley-Davidsons that guys would ride down in Florida at the Daytona Big Bike Week, and, well, we'll talk about that experience at Daytona Bike Week after the break.
That's right, and we've got a number of stations in Florida, so turn up your ears, so to speak. This is Auto World. I'm Bob Long.
Hey, it's Billy F. Gibbons from ZZ Top, and you're listening right here to Auto World.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Dan Watson is with us, CEO of the oilpage.com, the lubepage.com, what am I saying? By all means, check it out. Does a wonderful job on the website. And we're talking about motorcycle oils right off the top, and down here in Florida, where both Dan and I reside, there's a big week of motorcycle action happening at Daytona every year. I know they just had it a couple of weeks back. I've never been to it. Have you been to that particular event?
Yes, I've been there. I went, enjoyed it. I usually don't go back over there now because the crowds are immense. Everybody's having a good time, but I'm not the big crowd person. I may have even been at one time before, so I'll kind of avoid it when it gets to be quite that thick. I mean, it really pours in. It quadruples the population of Daytona Beach, you know. I mean, it just goes crazy. But we had folks driving, typically their Harley-Davidson motorcycles over there, and how they'll be moving along, and it would get hot. And guys would end up having to pull their bikes over at some of the lights and stuff and stop for a while and let it cool, because it actually gets so hot they'd start to lose some compression. And the immediate fix for this for my own customers was that they would come to me and say, hey, I need to get some Amsoil 20W50 motorcycle oil and see if that'll help with my bike overheating and losing compression. And it would fix it every time. And the reason is that the response to that high temperature of regular petroleum is to reach a point to where it just cascades thinning out. It just gets too thin, and it won't make a good seal between the ring and the cylinder wall, and you lose compression. Now, the Amsoil 20W50 will handle temperatures, well, let's just say it'll be handling without any trouble temperatures to 330, 340 degrees. It'll handle intermittent temperatures to 480 degrees. So you're not going to get your bike hot enough to thin this oil out to where it won't hold compression. If you did, you'll be off of it and hunting a fire extinguisher, because it would have to literally be, it'd have to be 400 degrees before it could thin the oil out to lose compression. It's not going to get there. So it's just one of those characteristics that you find that moves people to synthetic. Now, for years, we were selling oil in these applications with 20W50. And finally, lo and behold, after so much resistance and argument, Harley-Davidson came out with their Screaming Eagle version of synthetic motorcycle oil. Now, I appreciate that, and I'm not knocking that they came out with a synthetic motorcycle oil, but these are the same guys that for 10 years we had to argue that the synthetic motorcycle oil was an excellent option for these air-cooled bikes. Now, as soon as Harley decided that that was true, they made their own, and they claimed it was the greatest thing since sliced bread and indoor plumbing. And it just shows you that there's a lot of things that happen in the world of synthetic lubrication, which has to do with who's making money and who's not, and what that prevailing opinion will be. It's not technology. It's based on, well, we don't have a synthetic engine oil under our label, so we'll say that it's not appropriate to use it in our equipment. But as soon as we finally get one and produce it and put our label on it, it's not only appropriate, it's the best thing since sliced bread. So I just caution all the listeners out there to understand that if you hear an argument that says something about the fact that a synthetic oil is shouldn't be used in place of your petroleum oil in some piece of equipment, that's got to be some other angle, because it's certainly not based on the technology or the lubrication or the chemistry involved in making the product. Because that's like saying that I can't use those high-performance radials on my car because I can only use these glorified trailer tires that I've got, and I just can't go to that. Oh, wait a minute. My company came out with a set of radials under their label, and now I can use those same radials on my car. So be, what's the best term, dubious of anybody saying that synthetic engine oil is not an improvement or an upgrade over the petroleum counterpart in any application. Now, there may be places where you don't want to use it because you're just consuming it, and there's no reason to leak out, $8 a quart oil onto the driveway because you got bad valve cover gaskets. Then you might as well run the $2 oil if you're just going to let it pour out by the valve gasket. And so that would say, hey, yeah, if you're going to leak all that oil, there's no reason to pay that much money for it. But that's because of bad gaskets, not the fact that the synthetic oil is not superior to the petroleum oil. So in motorcycles, it's really straightforward, Bob. You need oil that can handle higher temperatures for especially the air-cooled bikes. And you need oil that can handle pretty high stress. There's what they call a high temperature type test that's done, and this measures the ability of the oil to maintain its oil film at high temperature and high RPM. And that number is very important in motorcycles. Also, with motorcycles, if you can get it, it's nice to have an oil that has a good chemical rust inhibitor in the oil, because a lot of these bikes, contrary to for some people, they want to use them constantly, but they don't. They're like a second recreational type product that they've got. They don't get them out as often as they'd like. So having that additional rust inhibitor inside the engine is a real benefit, because it allows you to keep that engine pristine, even though you might not get it out and drive it every week. If you have this good quality motorcycle-specific oil in it that has a rust inhibitor, then you're doing yourself a second favor by keeping the insides of your bike in good shape. I guess sort of the moral of this story is that there are ways to tailor lubricating oils for specific applications, and this is one for motorcycles that deserves to have a specifically tailored additive package and base stock oil to go in that motorcycle that will best protect it, and it's not best protected by an average type oil that's designed for a broad number of applications. So that's kind of a summary of motorcycle oil, Bob. You see anything I left out? Yeah. We might have lost Bob on that connection, so as long as you still have me.
I'm back here.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
All right. Okay, we thought the electronics had gone fishing again, so.
Yeah, we've been having one of those days, but we're going to get it straightened out. This is the week.
Well, like I said, I think we covered most of the basics of motorcycle oil, so maybe we'll come back after the break and see if we got some questions.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody call in at 855-660-4261, Bob at AutoWorldRadio.com. This is Auto World. Bob Long and Dan Watson. Don't go away. From anybody else, and I mean, try calling, you name it, Mobil or whatever oil company that's out there. And there are quite a few kind of boutique books in the automotive realm. And somebody needs to do the work on it. So congratulations on all that work, Barbara. Let's talk a little bit more about motorcycles and engine oil. And I was wondering, nowadays, you see a lot of those young people, I sound like an old guy, young people, driving the high-performance Japanese motorcycles, which I've heard are extraordinarily fast. And also the Ducati has become a motorcycle of choice for a lot of affluent folks. And, of course, Harley continues to do very well. Dan?
Yes, Bob, it sounds like we got a little bit of electronic noise going on, but I hear you fine. It just sounds like there's some electronics doing something odd in the background. So,
yeah, we'll see if we can take care of that right now.
Yeah, it's an odd sound.
See if this makes any difference.
Yeah.
All right, hopefully that will make a difference.
All right. We try to get a control on this. Folks, this is live radio. This is not make-believe. Sometimes the live radio, the little spooks in the equipment don't know when to be quiet, so it never fails. Well, listen, those Japanese motorcycles are in the industry referred to as the metric bikes, and they are extremely fast, high performance, and they usually require, a lot of them require either 1030 or 1040 engine oil. So they have a lighter weight oil than the bigger V-twin motorcycles, like the BMWs and the Harleys and the Indian motorcycles. We still got some noise back there, Bob.
Oh, we better rattle the producer's cage a little bit.
Yeah.
I killed it on this end. That should do the trick. See if Patrick can get a hold of what's going on. We're getting a little bit of noise. Dan Watson is picking it up. He'll work on it.
Yeah. So anyway, in these metric bikes, beautiful machines, a lot made by the Japanese, and I'm sure there's versions coming out of Korea, and who knows how far the Chinese have gone with making them. Chinese make a lot of scooters. I'm not familiar that they've gotten heavily into exporting motorcycles to us, but scooters, lots of Chinese scooters in the country. And these scooters are really prevalent. Like here in Orlando, we have a big college town here with University of Central Florida. And a lot of people ride scooters around because they're inexpensive transportation. I wouldn't say that, in my opinion, they're the safest transportation in this crazy traffic, but they are inexpensive to operate. But I think sometimes you put your life at risk for saving some money on the cost of fuel. But in the metric motorcycles, the 10W40 and 10W30, now we're even moving down to thinner oil, meaning that there's even a greater need to run high-performance synthetic engine oils, because you start running 30-weight oil in some of these high-performance motorcycles, and you better make sure that it's a top-quality 30-weight oil. And I would suggest that looking at the Amsoil motorcycle oils for a couple of reasons. One is Amsoil's now second in the nation. And Amsoil's not a big company. They're a pretty small company. To be second in the nation in providing synthetic motorcycle oils is quite a notch in their performance belt. But their motorcycle oils are well received and quite prevalent in the motorcycle community. And so if you're going to ride one of these metric bikes, it'd be in your best interest to put a very high-quality motorcycle-rated 10W30 or 10W40 or 5W40. You know, they have those requirements. But don't use any standard automotive oil in your motorcycles. That's the best tip I can give you, because the anti-wear additive package in an SN rated or classified automotive engine oil is maybe half the zinc and phosphorus you need in motorcycle oil. So don't do that. It is not worth a few pennies you'll save by buying that cheaper, less expensive automotive oil when you need a true motorcycle oil. And I would suggest that you always use in these motorcycles a well-known, high-quality synthetic motorcycle oil, because a lot of these, like these metric bikes we're talking about, they're running on the top end of their performance curve. Some of these metric bikes will be turning 8,000 RPM.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you just can't fool around with it. Fool around with it, you'll pay for it. So
you got it.
There's just no other way to say it. If you take shortcuts, you won't get away with it in those metric bikes. They'll catch up with you, and you'll wonder why it has no power, and it's because you just wore the rings out with cheap engine oil. So
yeah. Let's see if we can talk to Frank in New Mexico, who has a question for Dan. Hey there, Frank. How are you doing?
Pretty good, Bob. Enjoying the show as always. I do have a question relating to motorcycle lubricants, if I could.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I've got a '69, Kawasaki. It's a dirt bike, strictly dirt bike, and I was just wondering about the transmission oil I should be using in that. I've just been using all these years ATF, You got something better?
Well, no, not particularly, because in that dirt bike, you're talking about a small gearbox that actually ATF is a pretty good match. Now, what I would tell you is that since you do have a small volume, and I'm sure that you don't run this thing idling all the time, you probably put some stresses on it. Typical dirt bike, it's probably working its tail off. So my suggestion would be the next time you go to put ATF in that, you look for either Mobil, Amsoil, or a product called Castrol Transcend. Those are the three best synthetic automatic transmission fluids. And the reason I suggest the synthetic is because although everything has worked fine all these years, you get a lot more margin to flashing off that thin oil at high temperature when you use a synthetic transmission fluid. ATF is not even a 20-weight oil. It's what we call a 10W rated oil. It's very lightweight. And so you get it very hot, it starts actually flashing some of the oil to sort of an oil vapor rather than oil, and that oil vapor won't lubricate anything. So it's best to keep it all liquid, and the way to guarantee that, even at elevated temperatures, is to run one of the quality synthetic-based ATFs in that application.
Okay, I was always curious, too. Is there anything particularly about two-stroke oil? Because I never know which kind of two-stroke oil to put in my mix,
Two-stroke oil. Boy, you open up a great discussion, and I'll tell Bob we got to come back and talk about two-stroke oils the next Sunday night completely, because it is such a large discussion. They're putting us on a hard break, but when we come back, I will answer that question and tell you what type of two-stroke oil you should run in that dirt bike. And we'll be back in a minute.
With us, Frank. This is Auto World. I'm Bob Long.
Hi, this is Jay Leno, and you're listening to Auto World with Bob Long.
Watch out, man, how you drive that Cadillac there.
Thanks for joining us. You ever check out Jay's Garage on CNBC? I didn't like it at first, but it has grown on me, and I think it's a well-done show, very produced. There's a lot of people behind the scenes on that one. But we're in front of the scenes with Dan Watson, our lubrication specialist, over 25 years' worth of experience. And we also have on the line with us Frank from New Mexico, who is throwing a very interesting motorcycle two-stroke engine over the airwaves to Dan. Go right ahead, Dan.
Well, two-stroke oil, as our listeners would understand, refers to oil that we're going to mix with the gas, and that's called premix, or in other cases, with some of the newer equipment, it may be injected into the gasoline with a mixing system that's controlled by a computer, or it may, in fact, be spritzed into the intaking air on some and not even go into the gas at all, but it comes as a mist up into the cylinder. So here's the problem you run into with this. In any lubrication application that we have, mixing gasoline with our engine oil is a taboo. You don't do that. Gosh, you can't mix your diesel or your gas with the engine oil. But in a two-stroke application, we intentionally mix the oil with the gasoline. So it creates a whole slew of other challenges in the lubrication regime that is the two-stroke lubrication. Now, here's the important point I wanted to say about this for a dirt bike. You need a two-stroke oil that you can mix that you don't have to mix it so thick that we do with the typical petroleums like 32-1 or 16-1 or some other ridiculous thing in order to have enough oil to have a chance to keep the ring cylinder interface from wearing the devil out of it in these high temperature conditions and smoke just pouring out of this thing typically. Now, when you use Amsoil has a two-stroke oil called Interceptor Two-Stroke. This stuff is what they call a double additive package for high-performance two-stroke engines, and where it was developed was for these really high-performance two-stroke snowmobiles that have what they call a power control valve in the exhaust. But anyway, this product will give you more protection at a 50-to-1 mix than you couldn't find a petroleum oil, even if you mixed it at 8-to-1, that would give you the protection that this product does at a 50-to-1 premix. So we've also got one called Dominator, which is a racing version. I suggest that to people who like to keep their dirt bike over 5,000 RPM all the time, which, you know, it sounds crazy, but there are people that, well, if you run it like that, the Dominator is your best choice because it is designed for flat-out maximum performance.
Hope that helps you out, Frank. Thanks so much for the call. Don't be a stranger. So that's a whole other topic we're going to have to dive into. Yes, we'll put that on the list. We have quite a few emails floating in here. Here's a fairly simple one. A gentleman writing to us from Colorado, and the gentleman's name is, let's see, did he put his name in here? It's a long email. Grant in Colorado. And he owns a latter-day Corvette, a 2001 C5 edition Corvette, which came with the Mobil 1, and that's what he's been using at the dealership. He wants to know, would a switch to Amsoil save of money? Would it help the performance of the engine? Would it help engine life improve? What's your opinion, Dan, of a switch from Mobil 1 over to a synthetic from Amsoil?
Well, listen, first off, I, for one, will never really criticize Mobil synthetic products. They make excellent products, okay? Now, there is, in fact, Amsoil Signature Series synthetics, by the testing that both Mobil agrees to and we agree to, that we perform at a higher performance than regular Mobil 1. Now, that's straight up in the numbers. You can go online and you can look at the performance characteristics, and that will be found. What is different is in the Signature Series Amsoil synthetics, which are perfect for that Corvette. We actually carry the GM designator for the synthetic engine oil that meets the Corvette requirement. That's on our bottle, okay? And in that engine, probably a 5W30 application, Bob. You're more familiar with Corvettes than I am, but I think it's probably a 5W30. And what I would say is if you're still, that's a very good application. If you've been running Mobil, you probably have the engines in good shape, even though it's got some years on it, and you would continue to use that weight, a 5W30. Now, the Amsoil 5W30 Signature Series oil has just phenomenal anti-wear characteristics. They call it in the industry, it's got the super 4-ball wear test. It's just a terrific, terrific oil. And the nice thing about it is if you want to, you could run it for extended drains in that Corvette. I would tell you to keep it to about 12 to 15,000 miles if it were mine. The company would tell you could run it for longer than that, but I'd keep it about 12 to 15,000 miles or 1 year. And the difference is the Amsoil Signature Series oil still has a component of diester in the oil. Now, people say, what is that? Don't even worry. It's just a chemical, but it is a super part of the base stock, which integrated into the oil actually gives it performance characteristics that are higher than its counterpart in Mobil. So can you continue to use Mobil? Yes, you can. It's a good oil. Do you want to go up a little bit more? It's kind of like going between a 60,000-mile radial and an 80,000-mile radial. You just going up to the 80,000-mile radial, if you went to use Amsoil. Not knocking the 60,000 radio, but you'd just be buying a little bit higher performance, a little bit greater temperature capability, a little bit higher performance, anti-wear, high temperature, high shear characteristic of the oil.
And just to remind everybody, Dan sells all over the United States and as well as Canada. So if you order something from Dan, it's going to come right to your door.
Yes, and it's going to come from regional warehouses. It's not going to ship all the way from Orlando, Florida. It's going to come from one of the regional warehouses located throughout the country. So we've got all kind of deals on wholesale buying, deals on freight discounts, all kinds of different things. But the one thing you get when you come to the lube page is you're going to get our assistance in application, making sure that you get exactly the best match for your car, because I don't ever think that it's nice to come close. I think we should do precisely what you need and use the oil that I can recommend to you of the many that we have available that would be precisely what you need and give you the best protection and the best service.
And you can't do any better than that.
No, it's you don't have to pay anything extra to get my expertise. I'll toot my horn and say that it's hard for you to call Mobil and get the kind of direct application you'll get from me, because I am a certified lubrication specialist, and you won't probably be able to find one of those on any of the oil companies that you call, even if you tried to find one. They'll be higher up in the organization. They won't be answering the phone to help somebody out with their lubrication application.
And we want to remind everybody to visit thelubepage.com, and don't forget about those YouTube videos.
Yes, I've promised. Some people have been after me. I've promised I'm going to start to produce some new YouTube videos. And I've just been on a hiatus for a little while, some health issues, but I think those are cleared up fairly well. So you know how that works, Bob. Sometimes you have to know those things before you can drive on forward.
I know exactly what you mean, and it's got to get over a few bumps and everything will be okay.
Yes, and I do encourage people, you can email me. When you go to the website, thelubepage.com, you can easily ask a question on there. It's just there's a button to click, Ask Dan, and it lets you fill in what your question is, and I always answer your question.
There you go. He is our certified lubrication specialist, and what a great co-host for this hour as usual. Thank you so much for your time, Dan.
All right, Bob. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Seems I always end up driving by.
Folks, this is Bob Long, host of Auto World Radio, with great news. We have a new sponsor, Dan Watson, who distributes Amsoil throughout the USA and Canada. Dan is one of Amsoil's largest distributors. He's a former U.S. Navy nuclear specialist and a certified lubrication specialist with 25-plus years of experience. You can listen to Dan every Sunday evening live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on GCNlive.com. Get all of your questions answered and ensure you get the best lubrication for your car, truck, boat, or really anything that moves. In 1972, Amsoil pioneered synthetic lubrication, and Amsoil continues to provide the best lubrication money can buy. Get the best advice for the best results. Contact Dan at thelubepage.com. That's thelubepage.com. Or call 800-370-2986. That's 800-370-2986.